It's Mr. Nigel Farage.
Big Wigan welcome. Well, thank you. Thank you for that big Wigan welcome. Thank you very much indeed. It's been a great pleasure working with Rob over the course of the last few weeks. He has grown, not physically in stature, but in terms of his confidence. I'm told he's just done a hustings down the road, and he's getting better and better and better every time. And, you know, it's quite something that 1 minute you're fixing boilers and 3 weeks later you're live on Question Time with an audience that I would suggest wasn't necessarily that neutral. There is no doubt in my mind that this is close. No doubt in anybody's mind that it is a two-horse race. And no doubt in my mind, having been out for a couple of hours this morning going out round the doors, that we've certainly gained momentum from this time last week. I could see that with doors that have been considerers beginning to come to us in real numbers. So I'm very excited for what can happen here over the course of the next week. Going out knocking on doors is difficult for a party like ours because unless they're retired, most of our voters are part of Alarm Clock Britain. These are people that get up in the morning and go to work. Can you believe it? Yes, there are still people left in Britain that do actually go to work. And it's people who work that I want to talk about today. Yes, there's White Van Man, there's Rob, there are the sole traders, there are those that run small, limited companies. But there are something like 4.5 million businesses in Britain that are either sole traders or have fewer than 3 employees. About 4.5 million. And they have been one of the most put upon groups in society over the course of the last few decades. Westminster doesn't understand tradesmen and women. Westminster does not understand small business. And every time legislation comes in, whether it's around employment, the environment, health and safety, it applies equally to the small employer as it does to a giant multinational that's employing thousands of people. And that is one of the problems. The other problem, of course, is that virtually nobody, and certainly not in the Labour cabinet, has ever set up their own business, has ever worked for themselves. There is a complete lack of understanding. And there are several bugbears. One of them Rob has mentioned already. The idea that a sole trader now has to register online for tax 4 times a year. Frankly, under pain of a terrible penalty if they make the slightest error. Now, this is probably good news for local accountants who are having to do all the work, but it's not good news for those that are self-employed and running small businesses, and we will get rid of that provision, ease some of the burden that is being put upon these millions of people. But the really big one is the VAT threshold. In 2024, when Jeremy Hunt was the Conservative Chancellor, he put the threshold up by a derisory £5,000. So little that it frankly made no difference at all. And I wondered why he'd done that. Well, of course, as we know, Jeremy Hunt, a very keen Remainer, and the European Union has within its rules that the threshold for VAT cannot be above €100,000. That's why we got the derisory rise, and I can tell you, after 20 years, 7 months, 3 days and 4 hours as an MEP, that there is no understanding in Brussels of small business at all. All the rules and regulations are made for the big companies. So, as part of our Brexit freedoms and in an effort to give incentives, and we think this move I'm about to announce will directly impact 1/3 businesses on day one, but perhaps many, many more. What it will also do, it will increase productivity, because there are tens of thousands of companies whose income is just below the VAT threshold. They've got no incentive to take on another contract, no incentive to take on more work. So this will also boost productivity. And it is the right thing to do. And we are on the side of working people in this country. And not just those running small business and sole traders. I even met yesterday with one of the top conveners in the country from the Unite Union. We're on the side of working people. So what I'm going to propose today is something that ought to have happened many, many years ago, couldn't happen all the while we were in the grip of the European Union, won't happen with politicians that frankly want to take us back there, and that's pretty obvious by everything that the Prime Minister and this Labour government are doing, and that is to increase the VAT threshold from £90,000 to £150,000. Yes, on the face of it, there's an economic cost to it, an economic cost of about £2 billion. But if I'm right in that it leads to changes in behaviour by making people hungrier to take on more work, to employ more people, to grow their businesses, it'll begin to pay for itself. And it is for the first time giving the sole trader, the self-employed, the small businessman and woman, the first time, almost forever, giving them a break, because jolly well don't they deserve it. They are the backbone of our economy. And if you go broader with small businesses, they provide about 60% of the employment in the private labour market in this country. So we're very much on the side of white van man. We're very much on the side of the computer programmer. We're very much on the side of those people prepared to take a risk with no sick pay or anything like that, and to go out on their own and forge a future. And it's something the country needs very, very badly. I will, while I'm here, say some words about the barbarity that we saw on the streets of Belfast the other evening. It feels like Henry Novak was just a few days ago, and yet we've moved on now to a new story. There is absolutely no doubt in my mind that this man should not have been in this country. It is just as simple as that. He entered the country illegally, and is it any surprise that people in Belfast and elsewhere are scared? None of that justifies what was perpetrated by some bad actors last night. There's no doubt about that. There were some very, very bad actors doing bad things, but the vast majority of those people who were out on the streets in Belfast last night were not far right, were not extremists, just really scared about what's going on in their communities and about the lack of government action. There's none. Have you heard a single proposal for how any of this is going to change? In fact, if we go back to the Novak case last week, the Prime Minister is still in denial about two-tier policing in this country, yet you can see it written down on paper in terms of the instructions that are given to police officers. And I think these issues, the Belfast attempted beheading, the Novak death, these issues show, I think, how incredibly disconnected Westminster MPs and much of mainstream media are from where the centre of gravity, the common sense centre of gravity, is out there in the rest of the country. The gulf, the gap between the two, I don't think has ever been wider. And I think we are much more in touch with the common sense British public than the other political parties. That's certainly how I feel about it. Well, thank you all for coming along this afternoon. We've got a lot of work to do this evening, and there's no excuse. Manchester without the rain. We've got to take advantage of it. Before we go on to a private members' meeting across the road in a snooker club, I have got questions from the media, beginning with Kevin Fitzpatrick from BBC Northwest.
Hi, Nigel. Local questions for me on the Makerfield by-election. How would you sum up the campaign, really, and what's going to be the message in the last week or so? And in terms of the threat from Restore Britain to your votes, are you concerned that a chunk of votes going to Restore who might ordinarily have voted Reform could cost you this by-election?
OK, the first thing to say is there's a phrase there's a phrase that's coming up on the doorstep. I heard it several times this morning. Mr. Burnham is using this as a stepping stone. And that is not something that we've put into voters' minds. It's something people on the doorstep are volunteering to me. They see this as being a very cynical move, and I think for the last week of the campaign, we must emphasise and re-emphasise that Rob is a tradesman, a rugby fan, a family man, a former army reservist, about as far away from a career politician as you probably ever could get, thank the Lord. And I think we've got to keep pushing that fact that he's a local man, he's got family history in this constituency that goes back for 200 years, and he will be your MP. This is not a stepping stone for Rob. This is something that he actually passionately wants to do. That, I think, is going to be the key message over the course of the next few days. On the Restore vote, well, look, it's quite simple. It's quite simple. This is a two-horse race. It's a two-horse race. And if you vote for Restore, you risk, perhaps, the most left-wing Prime Minister of modern times. So that's the simple message that I'm going to put to Restore voters. I'm not going to return the levels of hatred and abuse that we get from some of their supporters online. It's pretty vile stuff, I can tell you. I'm not going to return the compliment. Just make it very, very clear. It's a two-horse race. Only Reform can beat the Labour Party in this by-election. And that is what I intend to do. Thank you very much. Charles Graham from the Wigan Observer.
Hello there. I was going to ask this one right at the end, but it turns out I'm at the beginning.
Well, there you go.
We've got a lot of conflict, haven't we? There's the cut and thrust of politics and all that. But do you think that when all the dust has settled, you and Rob Kenyon would sit down and have a couple of beers with Andy Burnham, do you think?
That's a good question.
You clearly haven't studied my reputation. I'd have a beer with anybody. Well, I tell you what, if he were to turn out to be the winner and get his 81 signatures and launch his campaign to become the next Prime Minister, I think Rob and I would love to sit down with him, because there are several things we'd want to say to him. And one of the first of those would be, please don't leave behind working people. Do you know, one of the doorstep conversations this morning, bloke answered the door. He said, I run a small business. My alarm goes off at 5:30 every morning. I feel that everything's against me. I feel completely put upon. He said, so much so that I ask myself some mornings at 5:30, why the hell am I even bothering? And I think maybe Mr. Burnham and the other senior figures in the Labour Party don't actually get that, don't understand that. And if we win, we'll invite him to the victory party. Okay, so there you go. Edward Barnes from the Manchester Evening News.
So given that Reform is saying that the race is close and obviously the controversies over past social media comments, do you feel like this campaign could have gone any better than it's gone so far?
On the past social media comments, I'm going to say this. You know, these comments were posted a decade ago. They've been taken wildly out of context, but they're the sort of comments that you won't necessarily get if you're an Oxford-educated career politician living in a nice postcode in London. But I tell you what, they're the kind of comments you'll hear in every pub in the country every evening, and we should be unapologetic that Rob is an ordinary bloke who's carved quite a career for himself, had the guts to set up a business, served as an army reservist, is a patriot, likes his rugby, likes the odd pint, and said a few laddish things on social media 10 years ago. Do you know what I'd say to that? I'd say, so what? And what about? What about all those politicians at local and national level in the north of England that covered up the grooming gang scandal at exactly the same time? Which of those is more serious? Thank you. Thank you. And how was your hustings? It was good. Good. Excellent. Excellent. Aaron Newbury, Daily Express.
Good afternoon. How concerned are you that Makerfield residents would effectively be left behind should Andy Burnham win, because he'll be a bit busy moving into number 10? And if I may, 66% of people here voted to leave the European Union. Yeah. And Burnham has said he wants to take us back in his lifetime. What's your message to Brexiteers in this seat who've yet to decide which party to back?
Don't vote for a guy that treats your vote with contempt, thinks he knows better than you, and wants to overturn the biggest open democratic result that we've ever had in this nation's history. And Aaron, your question sort of leads on from the stepping stone comment that I was getting earlier on today. We don't want the people of Makerfield to be left behind. We want them to have an engaged local lad acting as their Member of Parliament, standing up for their interests, defending the Green Belt where it's necessary, fighting for a new local hospital and doing all of those things. If you don't want to be left behind, then you better go out and vote Reform and vote Rob next Thursday. Thank you very much indeed. Christian Cowgie, Daily Mail.
Good afternoon. A couple of quick ones. We've published quite a few exposés on some astonishing levels of racism and anti-Semitism in Restore UK. Do you think that voters really understand what they might be getting into bed with if they vote for Mr Lowe's party? And secondly, you've taken a range of questions from various outlets of different ideologies today. Andy Burnham seems very reluctant to talk to anyone who might, ask some awkward questions. I just wonder, do you think he's ready for the big time, or is he a bit thin-skinned?
One voter on my doorstep was very rude about it, called him a wet wipe. I won't say I agree with that. Dreadful. Even in the course of the last month, he's flipped and flopped more on policy positions even than Keir Starmer has done in the course of the last 2 years. We know he's to the left politically, but what does he actually believe in? What is he actually going to stand up and fight for? And I don't know the answer to that. He doesn't know the answer to that. He actually does tick that box of career politician, telling people what he thinks they want to hear without ever being able to deliver it. And frankly, I would make this prediction. If he was successful next week, the honeymoon that he has as Prime Minister, I doubt will last till lunchtime, because he'll become a hostage of the backbenchers, and our debt levels will continue to spiral. You probably saw this week that our national debt is increasing faster than any other country in the world than Botswana. So we're in big trouble. And I do think that my prediction of a 2027 general election will come true, and it's the economy that will force it. On Restore, look, the truth is that they're getting a massive social media push from Elon Musk and X. That's really what's going on. If that wasn't happening, it frankly wouldn't really exist. All right? That's the absolute truth of it. Short term, it has the potential to be unhelpful. Long term, I don't believe it'll last. And if you look at one or two of their senior commentators, as one I can think of in particular, doing a podcast and saying to a chap whose family had been in Britain for many generations, well, because you're a Jew, you'll have to be kicked out. I think that speaks for itself. And I'm not sure the wider audience have yet seen all of that, but they will before very long. Thank you. Peter Schnettbangers, Daily Telegraph.
Hiya. The Henry Novak murder last week, not last week, but the events of it last week and what we've seen in Belfast this week has pushed immigration back to the top of a lot of people's agenda. You spoke about this being a very close race in Makerfield. Do you think that that being at the top of the agenda, helps you in this race? And what do you think is going to take place over the next 7 days?
Well, yeah, Burnham's record on this, of course, is he supports open-door migration. He's never been critical of it in any way at all. And from what I can see over the course of the last few years, has been pretty unconcerned about the boats crossing the channel, despite the fact Makerfield and much of the northwest is now filling up with HMOs. Filling up with HMOs in residential streets, young men whose identity and background we know absolutely nothing about. And, you know, you might have thought last week that I was a lone voice in a screaming, fuming House of Commons. But I thought this morning it was very interesting that Jonathan Hall, KC, who, of course, is the Tsar in charge of terrorism legislation in Britain, he has actually said this morning that immigration is now a national security issue, something that I have said for many, many years, and I'm perhaps not in quite as lonely a place as I was on this for many, many years. And will it make a difference over the course of the next week? I was beginning to see evidence of it on the doors this morning, and I think people know that when it comes to illegal immigration, I was the first person to go out and film what was happening, to publicise it. We've made it absolutely clear that nobody that comes to this country illegally will be allowed to stay, end of. And I think that position is very, very clear. It's right. So yes, I think it will probably make a difference over the course of the next week. Harry Horton, ITV News.
Thank you very much. I'd like to have asked a question of your by-election candidate, Rob Kenyon, but I'm told that I'm not able to question him at the moment.
Are you?
So I'll ask a question of you instead. In the local elections, your campaign slogan was vote reform, get rid of Keir Starmer.
Yeah.
Is it not the case in this by-election that the quickest way to get rid of Keir Starmer would be for people to vote for Andy Burnham?
Well, that's the argument Burnham will make, obviously. Look, Starmer's done. It's over. It's over. He's not going to survive whatever happens. You know, if Burnham loses, Streeting or somebody else will get the 81 signatures over the course of this summer. The Starmer premiership is over. And I think that's pretty clear to people. And part of the reason it's over is the stunning success that we had. You know, we fought 24 council seats in the Wigan area and won 23 of them. And that's why he's on the way out, because all those backbench Labour MPs know that if he stays, they are toast. I suspect they're toast anyway. So, yeah, I get it. That's what the Burnhamites will say on the doorstep. But the fact is, he's done. It's over. Thank you. And you'll have a chat with Rob and me afterwards, all right? I promise. Liam Gotting, LBC.
Hello. You addressed the past social media comments in the previous question from the MEN. I just wanted to ask whether or not you're worried about losing female voters and whether that could ultimately cost you the win in this by-election. And if I may, the leader of the reform-led St Helens Borough Council has said the council there, obviously not a million miles away from here, they won't be supporting or promoting Pride, and he says that he has instructed officers to cease engagement with all aspects of the event. Just wanted to ask if that's something you support and whether you'd like to see that replicated in other reform-led borough councils across the country.
I think it is. I think it is. I think you'll find that reform-led councils are not flying political symbols on their roofs. They're flying national flags on their roofs, not things to do with political campaigns. And now, as you may know, Reform is comfortably at the top of the opinion polls with male, gay and trans voters. It is. And most of those that I've spoken to don't think there's any need for Pride Month whatsoever. They've got equal treatment, they've got equal rights, they've got everything they campaigned for decades, and many of them simply can't see the point. So I have no objection to what St Helens have done whatsoever. Sorry, what was the first question? Oh, on women, yeah. Look, you know, we've had a charity that has directly involved itself in, thank you, that has directly involved itself in this election campaign by sending out some ridiculous misquoted letter from Carol Vorderman. I'm not sure, actually, that charities ought to be getting involved in by-election campaigns and spending money in the first place. But I would say this to you. Whatever attempted smears they're going to make against my friend Rob over here, the truth of it is that it's women, and particularly mothers and grandmothers, that are the most concerned about the safety of their kids and grandkids on the streets of this country. And so, no, I don't think their attempts, to paint us into this corner are going to work at all. Law and order, safety on the streets, feeling their kids can go to concerts on Saturday nights and get home safely. I think these are bigger female issues than they are male issues. I really do. Lucy Fisher, Financial Times.
Mr Farage, thank you. Firstly, I wanted to ask you, Reform lost the Gorton and Denton by-election earlier this year. If the party loses next week, are you concerned that it might be losing momentum? And can I ask for your up-to-date views on voter reform? You said last year that there's a point at which first past the post turns from being an enemy to a friend. Do you back the current system, or would you like to introduce proportional representation, and which voting model? Thank you.
Gorton and Denton, I'm absolutely convinced we won Gorton and Denton amongst British-born people. Absolutely convinced. And I have to say, whilst Commonwealth voting might have worked in decades gone by, it doesn't work in an age of mass migration. So there were people in Gorton and Denton who came to Britain, were living in the Gorton area, who came as part of the Boris wave, who couldn't speak English, but still had a vote in that by-election. Are we losing momentum? It is not a pantomime, but go on. Oh, they're all behind me, don't worry. Have you seen the opinion polls? Today, more in common, 30%, 10-point lead. Every opinion poll, even YouGov, every opinion poll over the course of the last month has us up, going up, consistently up, and leads of 9 or 10 points over the other parties. But it's interesting that you ask about reform of voting in this country, which of course leads us directly on to Gorton and Denton. An independent body, made up predominantly of Liberal Democrats, but an independent body said they had witnessed in 58% of polling stations in Gorton and Denton a practice known as family voting. Well, we outlawed all of this in the 1850s. That the privacy of the polling booth, that was supposed to be a place of sanctity. Not that the women are dragged in, watched over whilst they vote, a photograph taken of the ballot paper, and that photograph then sent on. I mean, that was an abomination. An abomination. And what did Greater Manchester Police do? Nothing. Absolutely nothing. And if you think that's bad, just think of the levels of fraud and intimidation that go on with postal voting. And we've seen people go to prison consistently over the last 20 years, and no one does a thing. And I have consistently, Lucy, since 2015, said that our voting system is rotten in places. So I'm quite prepared to think about changing the House of Lords, quite prepared to think about whether an AV Plus model that gave representation to small voices would be the right way forward. I'm open to all of that. But first, we have to fix the integrity of our electoral system. And frankly, I think France gets this right. Now, you could argue the French don't get much right, but France gets this right in that, you don't get postal votes in France. Unless, of course, you want a proxy vote and you've got a very good reason to do so. And that reason would be severe disability. That reason would be working overseas. And about 2.5% of the turnout in a French general election is proxy votes. Before Blair changed the law in this country in 2001, about 2.5% of a general election vote was sorted out by post or by proxy. I suggest we scrap the postal voting register in its entirety as it currently is, and the only reason for a postal vote or for a proxy vote would be that you've got a very good reason. So my absolute #1 priority is to fix the integrity of our electoral system, and that comes before any other constitutional thoughts or change. Beth Rigby, Sky News.
Thank you, Mr Farage. The family of the victim of the shocking attack in Belfast has said today, we have many migrants who make a deeply valuable contribution to our country. We do not want this terrible tragedy to divide people and fuel hostility. How are you reflecting on that in how you respond, particularly in light of the controversy around your response to the horrific Henry Novak case? And when it comes to Makerfield, Restore are doing well here, and it could really help. It could really hurt you. What's Rupert Lowe got that it's appealing to some people over you? Thank you very much.
Elon Musk, thank you. I mean, most people here who say Restore, and by the way, it's not a very big percentage, most people here would not recognise a photograph of him. Right? This is stuff that pops up on their phones. That has been the problem with it. I do not believe for a moment it will last. And look, whatever the family said in Belfast, the fact is things kicked off in Belfast last night in a very, very big way. And things will continue to kick off. And I'm very open about the fact there were some very bad actors get involved in this stuff, but not the vast majority. The vast majority are fearful. The vast majority want action. They actually want something done to make their streets safer. And nothing is being proposed. It wasn't by the last government. It's not by this government. And I think the worry is over the course of the summer. And it seems there's not even a week that goes by now where we don't read of some horrific mass sexual assault or something like that that has been committed by somebody who just should not be in Britain. I think the fear is this stuff gets worse. Unless you give people hope, this stuff will get worse. And as for the controversy, so-called controversy over my comments, I don't think telling the truth is controversial. It shouldn't be. How can the Prime Minister say there's no two-tier policing? Just read the reports. Just read the instructions. Just look at what has happened downstream from the so-called Equality Act. And I've had so many emails from serving and former police officers telling me they're living in an atmosphere of fear. Because, what happened in Southampton, of course, was that the murderer's brother rang the police and said there'd been a racist attack. And so the police went there with that uppermost in their minds. And had there been a complaint against the police that an accusation of racism had not been taken seriously, they'd probably be suspended on the spot. It's almost the biggest fear of police officers now, is this is what you get accused of. And you police to that. And you're actually instructed not to police everybody the same. To police different racial groups differently. Well, I'm really sorry. If Westminster is blinded to the sheer stupidity and division that this is causing, then I can't do much about it. What I can do is make the argument that I genuinely believe is supported by the vast majority of common sense, decent, law-abiding people in this country. We've got to wake up to this, and you know what? We will. Thank you very much, everybody.
Yeah.